I always believed that a mother's love could survive anything. I believed it when I was young and hopeful, when I first held my son in my arms and promised him the world. I believed it through scraped knees and sleepless nights, through schoolyard bullies and teenage rebellion. I believed it even as the years passed and the distance between us grew, as life pulled us in different directions. But nothing could have prepared me for the day my son looked me in the eyes and told me I was too ugly to attend his wedding. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that slips by unnoticed, ordinary in every way. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through old photographs, when the phone rang. My heart leapt when I saw his name on the screen. David, my only child, the boy I had raised on my own after his father left. He didn't call often, not anymore, but when he did, I always answered on the first ring. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice tight, formal. I could tell something was wrong before he even spoke the words. "I need to talk to you about the wedding." I smiled, trying to keep my voice light. "Of course, sweetheart. I've been looking forward to it. I already found a dress." He cut me off, his words sharp as broken glass. "Mom, I don't want you to come." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I stared at the phone, certain I had misheard. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He hesitated, and in that pause, I heard everything he wasn't saying. "It's just, I don't want people to see you. You know how you look. I don't want you to embarrass me in front of everyone." The words hit me like a slap. I felt my cheeks burn, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the table. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to remind him of all the sacrifices I had made, all the nights I had gone without so he could have more. But all I could manage was a choked, "David, I'm your mother." Sure, he sighed, the sound heavy with impatience. "I know, Mom, but this is my day. I want everything to be perfect. Please, just don't make this harder than it has to be." I sat in silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the wall. I thought about the years I had spent loving him, the birthdays and holidays, the scraped knees and broken hearts. I thought about the way he used to run into my arms, the way he used to call me beautiful. "Okay," I said finally, my voice barely more than a whisper, "if that's what you want." He hung up, without another word. I sat at the table for a long time after the call ended, staring at the photographs spread out before me. There was David as a baby, his chubby cheeks flushed with laughter. David on his first day of school, clutching my hand, his eyes wide with excitement and fear. David at his high school graduation, tall and proud, his arms slung around my shoulders. In every picture, I saw the same thing: love, fierce, unconditional, unbreakable love. But now, all I felt was emptiness. The days that followed were a blur. I went through the motions, cooking, cleaning, watering the plants, but everything felt hollow, meaningless. I avoided the neighbors, ignored the phone, let the mail pile up on the counter. I couldn't bear the thought of explaining, of admitting that my own son was ashamed of me. At night, I lay awake, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. I wondered what I had done to deserve this, what flaw in me had made him turn away. I thought about the accident that had left scars on my face, the years of surgeries and pain, the way people sometimes stared when I walked down the street. I had learned to live with it, to hold my head high, to find beauty in the life I had built. But now, all I could see was ugliness. I tried to tell myself that it didn't matter, that I didn't need his approval to be happy. But the truth was, I had built my entire world around him. Every decision, every sacrifice, every hope and dream, I had done it all for David. And now, he was gone. A week before the wedding, I received an invitation in the mail. It was addressed to Ms. Evelyn Carter, written in a hand I didn't recognize. Inside was a card, elegant and impersonal, with the details of the ceremony and reception. There was no note from David, no mention of me as his mother, just a line at the bottom: "Formal attire required." I stared at the invitation, my hands shaking. I thought about throwing it away, about pretending the wedding didn't exist, but something inside me refused to let go. I had spent my whole life loving David, and I wasn't going to let him erase me so easily. I decided to go to the wedding, not as a guest, not as his mother, but as a witness. I would see him one last time, see the smile on his face, and then I would let him go. I would let him have his perfect day, his perfect life, and I would walk away with my dignity intact. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and heavy, the sky threatening rain. I woke before sunrise, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. I moved through the house in silence, careful not to disturb the memories that clung to every corner. I made myself a cup of tea, the familiar ritual grounding me, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the invitation one last time. I thought about what to wear. The dress I had bought months ago, a soft blue with delicate lace sleeves, hung untouched in my closet. I ran my fingers over the fabric, remembering how excited I'd been when I found it, how I'd imagined David's face lighting up when he saw me. Now, the thought made my chest ache. I put the dress back and chose something simple, a dark skirt, a plain blouse, a scarf to cover the scars on my neck. I didn't want to draw attention. I just wanted to see my son happy, even if it meant standing in the shadows. I left the house early, driving slowly through the quiet streets. The city was waking. The world moving on as if nothing had changed. I parked a block away from the church, my hands trembling as I locked the car. I walked the rest of the way, my head down, my heart pounding in my chest. The church was beautiful, draped in white ribbons and fresh flowers. Guests milled about on the steps, laughing and chatting, their faces bright with anticipation. I stood at the edge of the crowd, invisible, watching as David greeted his friends and family. He looked handsome in his suit, his hair neatly combed, his smile wide and easy. For a moment I let myself remember the little boy he had been, the way he used to cling to my hand, the way he used to look at me as if I were the center of his world. Now he barely glanced in my direction. I slipped inside the church before the ceremony began, finding a seat in the very back row. I kept my head down, my hands folded tightly in my lap. I watched as the guests filed in, as the music swelled and the bridal party made their way down the aisle. When David's bride appeared, radiant in white, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. David's face lit up, his eyes shining with love and pride. I felt a pang of longing, a wish that he could look at me that way, just once more. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were heartfelt, the promises sincere. I watched as David slipped the ring onto his bride's finger as they sealed their union with a kiss. The guests erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the church. I clapped quietly, tears streaming down my face. I was happy for him, truly. I wanted him to have the life he dreamed of, even if it didn't include me. After the ceremony, I slipped out before anyone could see me. I stood on the sidewalk, watching as the guests spilled out of the church, laughing and hugging, posing for photographs. I saw David and his new wife surrounded by friends, their faces glowing with joy. I wanted to run to him, to throw my arms around him, to tell him how proud I was. But I stayed where I was, hidden in the crowd, my heart breaking all over again. I walked back to my car, the weight of the day pressing down on me. I sat behind the wheel, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I saw the lines on my face, the scars that twisted my skin, the sadness in my eyes. I understood, in that moment, why David had been ashamed. I understood, but it didn't make it hurt any less. I drove home in silence, the radio off, the world outside a blur. When I walked through the front door, the house felt emptier than ever. I wandered from room to room, touching the things that had once brought me comfort. The photographs, the books, the faded quilt on my bed. I sat at the kitchen table, the invitation still lying where I had left it, and let myself cry. The days that followed were long and lonely. I avoided the phone, ignored the doorbell, let the world shrink to the size of my living room. I replayed the wedding in my mind, the way David had smiled, the way he had looked right through me. I wondered if he would ever call, if he would ever realize what he had done. I wondered if I would ever be able to forgive him, but slowly, something inside me began to shift. I started to remember the woman I had been before the scars, before the pain, before I had given everything to my son. I remembered the dreams I had put aside, the passions I had buried. I realized that I had spent so many years living for David that I had forgotten how to live for myself. One morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the window. The air warm and sweet. I made myself breakfast, savoring the taste of fresh bread and honey. I opened the windows, letting the breeze fill the house. I put on music and danced in the kitchen, my laughter echoing off the walls. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive. I began to reach out to old friends, to say yes to invitations, to fill my days with things that brought me joy. I started painting again, filling canvas after canvas with color and light. I volunteered at the local library, reading to children and helping with community events. I found purpose in small acts of kindness, in the simple pleasure of being needed. And slowly, the pain began to fade. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself growing stronger, more certain of who I was beyond the title of David's mother. I realized that my life, for so long defined by sacrifice and selflessness, could be something more, a canvas waiting for new colors, a story with chapters yet unwritten. The ache in my chest dulled, replaced by a quiet pride in my resilience. I had survived heartbreak, humiliation, and the deepest kind of loneliness, and I was still standing. I started to see beauty in places I'd once overlooked. The way the morning sun painted golden stripes across my living room floor, the laughter of children playing in the park, their joy unburdened by the world's judgments, the kindness of strangers, a smile at the grocery store, a compliment on my scarf, a gentle word from a neighbor. Each small moment was a reminder that life could still be sweet, that I could still belong. One afternoon, as I was leaving the library, a little girl tugged at my sleeve. She looked up at me with wide, curious eyes. "Why do you have those lines on your face?" she asked, her voice innocent and unafraid. For a moment, I hesitated, unsure how to answer, but then I knelt down, meeting her gaze. "These are my remarks," I said softly. "They show that I've been through hard things and come out stronger." She smiled, satisfied with my answer, and skipped away. I watched her go, my heart lighter than it had been in years. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and traced the scars on my face with gentle fingers. For the first time, I didn't see ugliness. I saw survival. I saw a woman who had endured pain and loss, who had loved fiercely and been broken, but who had chosen to keep living. I saw someone worthy of kindness, of respect, of love. I began to write letters to David, though I never sent them. In those letters I poured out everything I couldn't say aloud, the hurt, the anger, the longing for the boy he used to be. I told him about my days, about the small victories and the moments of joy. I told him that I forgave him, not because he had asked for it, but because I needed to let go. I told him that I would always love him, but that I was learning to love myself too. Sometimes I wondered if he thought about me, if he regretted the words he had said. I wondered if he would ever reach out, if he would ever want to mend what had been broken. But I stopped waiting for his call. I stopped measuring my worth by his approval. I started living for myself, for the woman I was becoming. One Sunday, I attended a community art show at the local park. I displayed a few of my paintings, landscapes bursting with color, portraits of women with strong, beautiful faces. People stopped to admire my work, to ask about my inspiration. I told them the truth, that every painting was a piece of my journey, a testament to the power of healing. An older woman approached me, her eyes shining with understanding. "You have a gift," she said. "You turn pain into beauty." Her words stayed with me, a quiet affirmation that I was on the right path. As autumn arrived, the world outside changed once again. Leaves turned crimson and gold, swirling through the air like confetti. I spent my afternoons walking through the park, breathing in the crisp air, letting the beauty of the season fill me up. I realized that I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. I was building a life that was rich and full, a life that belonged to me. One evening, as I was closing up the library after a long day of volunteering, I heard someone call my name. I turned to see David standing on the steps, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his eyes uncertain. For a moment, I couldn't move. My heart pounded in my chest, 1,000 emotions crashing over me at once. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. "Hello, David." He hesitated, glancing down at his shoes. I wanted to see you. I've been thinking about what I said, about the wedding. I'm sorry, I was selfish. I hurt you, and I can't take it back." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy I had raised. The boy who had once called me beautiful, who had once needed me more than anything. I saw the man he had become, flawed and struggling, but trying to make things right. It hurt, I said honestly. But I'm okay. I've found my way. He nodded, tears shining in his eyes. I miss you, Mom. I want you in my life. If you'll have me. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. I'll always be your mother, David. But I need you to see me, all of me, scars and all. He stepped forward, his arms open, and for the first time in years, I let myself be held. I let myself believe that forgiveness was possible, that love could survive even the deepest wounds. The embrace with my son was both a beginning and an ending. It was the end of the silence that had stretched between us, the end of the ache that had lived in my chest since the day he shut me out. But it was also the beginning of something new, something fragile, uncertain, but real. We stood there for a long time, neither of us speaking, letting the years of pain and regret dissolve in the warmth of forgiveness. When we finally pulled apart, David wiped his eyes and managed a shaky smile. You look good, Mom, he said, and for the first time in a long time, I believed him. Not because my scars had faded, or because I had become someone else, but because I had learned to see myself through kinder eyes. I smiled back, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. We walked together through the quiet streets, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his new job, about his wife, about the challenges and joys of married life. I listened, grateful for the sound of his voice, for the chance to be part of his world again. I told him about my art, about the library, about the friends I had made and the life I was building. He listened, really listened, and I saw pride in his eyes. As we reached my house, David hesitated on the porch. I know I can't undo what I said, he began, his voice trembling. But I want to make it right. I want you to meet my wife. I want you to be part of our family. The invitation was everything I had once longed for, but now, I felt no desperation, no need to prove myself. I had found my own happiness, my own sense of worth. I nodded, accepting his offer, but on my own terms. The first meeting with his wife was awkward, but kind. She greeted me with a warm smile, her eyes gentle and sincere. Over dinner, we shared stories and laughter, the conversation easy and unforced. I saw the way David looked at her, the way she looked at him, and I felt a bittersweet joy. He had found love, and I was grateful for that. I realized that I didn't need to be the center of his world anymore. It was enough to be a part of it. As the weeks passed, our relationship slowly healed. David called more often, inviting me to family gatherings, asking for advice, sharing pieces of his life. I met his friends, his colleagues, the people who mattered to him. I learned to let go of the past, to accept the present, to hope for the future. There were still moments of pain, still memories that stung, but they no longer defined me. I had learned to forgive, not just David, but myself. One afternoon, as we sat together in my garden, David turned to me, his expression serious. Mom, I want to thank you for everything, for loving me even when I didn't deserve it, for being strong when I was weak, for teaching me what it means to forgive. His words brought tears to my eyes, but they were tears of gratitude, not sorrow. I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. We're both learning, David. That's what family is for. I continued to paint, to volunteer, to fill my days with purpose and joy. My art flourished, my circle of friends grew, and I found myself looking forward to each new day. I realized that my life was not defined by the scars on my face or the mistakes of my past, but by the love I gave and received, by the courage to keep moving forward. One evening, as I was preparing for bed, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I saw a woman who had been broken and rebuilt, who had faced rejection and found acceptance, who had lost everything and discovered that she was enough. I smiled at my reflection, feeling a deep, abiding peace. The next morning, I received a letter in the mail. It was from a young woman who had seen my paintings at the art show. She wrote about her own struggles with self-image, about the scars she carried, about the pain of feeling invisible. She thanked me for sharing my story, for showing her that beauty could be found in survival, that strength could be found in vulnerability. Her words touched me deeply, a reminder that our stories matter, that our pain can become someone else's hope. I wrote back, encouraging her to keep going, to find her own voice, to believe in her own worth. I realized that my journey was not just about healing myself, but about helping others heal too. I began to speak at community events, sharing my story with anyone who needed to hear it. I saw the way people listened, the way their eyes filled with tears and hope. I knew then that I had found my purpose. As the seasons changed once more, I felt a sense of contentment settle over me. My life was not perfect, but it was mine. I had learned to let go of what I could not change, to cherish what I had, to forgive what had hurt me. I had learned that love, real love, survives even the deepest wounds. And as I watched my son smile at me across the dinner table, I knew that I had given him one last gift, the gift of forgiveness, the gift of seeing his mother not as a burden, but as a blessing. I let him smile, let him be happy, and in doing so, I found my own happiness too. The years that followed were gentler, filled with the kind of quiet joys I once thought I'd lost forever. I watched David grow into a man who understood the value of kindness, who cherished his family, who learned from his mistakes. Our relationship was not perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, of memories that stung. But it was real. And it was enough. I continued to paint, my canvases growing bolder, more vibrant. Each brushstroke was a declaration. I am here. I am whole. I am beautiful, scars and all. My art found its way into local galleries, and sometimes strangers would stop me on the street to tell me how much my work meant to them. I always smiled, grateful for the chance to touch another life, to remind someone that survival is its own kind of beauty. I became a mentor to others who struggled with self-worth, who carried scars, visible or hidden, through their days. I listened to their stories, offered encouragement, and shared my own journey. I told them that healing is not a straight line, that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, that love is always worth the risk. I watched as they found their own strength, as they learned to see themselves through gentler eyes. Vid and his wife welcomed a child, a little girl with her father's eyes and her grandmother's stubborn spirit. When I first held her, tiny and perfect, I felt a wave of love so fierce it brought tears to my eyes. I promised her, silently, that I would always be there, that I would teach her to be brave, to be kind, to love herself no matter what the world said. Family gatherings became a source of joy rather than pain. I watched as David's wife set the table, as my granddaughter played in the garden, as laughter filled the rooms that had once echoed with silence. I was no longer the outsider, no longer the secret shame. I was a mother, a grandmother, a survivor. I belonged. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of gold and pink, David sat beside me on the porch. He took my hand, his grip warm and steady. "Thank you, Mom," he said softly. "For forgiving me, for loving me, even when I didn't deserve it, for teaching me what real beauty is." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. "Thank you for coming back," I whispered. "Thank you for seeing me." As the stars appeared overhead, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the heartbreak, the loneliness, the slow, steady work of healing. I thought about the day David told me I was too ugly for his wedding, about the pain that nearly broke me. I thought about the choice I made to let him have his perfect day, to let him smile one last time, even as I stood in the shadows. I realized that in letting go, I had found freedom. In forgiving, I had found peace. If you are listening to my story, if you have ever felt unwanted, unseen, or unloved, I want you to know this: you are enough. Your scars do not define you. Your worth is not measured by someone else's approval. You are beautiful, exactly as you are, and you are never alone. I was just a mother who loved her son, a woman who learned to love herself. I let him smile one last time, and then I chose to smile too. Not for him, not for anyone else, but for me. Because I survived, because I healed, because I am still here. And that, I have learned, is the most beautiful thing of all.